2 years after my best friend got married, she introduced me to her brother-in-law. She married the younger brother, a judge, and I married the older one, a renowned surgeon and team captain. 8 months into my pregnancy, I was kidnapped. The kidnapper used my phone to call my husband. The line got disconnected 7 times, and after each call, his patience wore thinner. Finally, he lost it and sent a hard kick straight to my stomach. Pain erupted, twisting through me, and I broke into a cold sweat. A faint smear of red pooled beneath me on the floor. One last attempt. This time, someone picked up on the other end. Winnie fell at the mall and is bleeding. Stop calling me. Damn it. This isn't about you vying for attention. When that threat didn't work, the kidnapper's frustration turned to fury. With a violent motion, he stabbed a knife right into my belly. Just as I felt the end approaching, my best friend tracked me down through my phone's location. She saw me lying there in a pool of blood and quickly dialed her judge husband for help. All she got was a message in reply: "Winnie's in court. Do not disturb." She tried to call the police, but there was no signal. Unable to reach anyone, she dragged me to her car and tried to get us down the mountain, but as luck or fate would have it, a landslide blocked the way. We were trapped, rain pouring down and mud closing in. It was a forest ranger who eventually found us, saving us from the brink of death. When I came to, the first thought that crossed my mind was divorce. After confirming that my best friend had also made it through, I immediately messaged Ross, telling him I wanted a divorce. 2 days went by with no reply. "Our baby is gone," I finally messaged him. That got his attention. For the first time, he called back. "Maisie, is that what you do now?" If I don't respond, "You threatened to hurt the baby? Didn't I tell you to stay home and rest? You had to go off on these ridiculous whims, calling 8 times when I didn't answer, like some lunatic." There was a scene at the mall. Winnie was there, and she almost miscarried from the fright. How is anything more important than 2 lives? I'm warning you. Don't use the baby to manipulate me. If you want to get rid of it, do it. Just as you please. Ross, came a soft, fragile voice from his end. "Don't be mad at her. She's just concerned about you. This is all my fault. Winnie, this isn't on you." And with that, the line went dead. My hand dropped weakly, the faintest trace of bitter laughter at my lips. Of course, how could I ever compare to his precious Winnie? Trying to hold on would only humiliate me further. But what about my baby? My child should have been able to meet me in just 2 more months. The mall incident had all been about me, orchestrated because of Ross. The moment they grabbed me, the kidnappers slapped me across the face, twice, leaving me dizzy and disoriented. I could just barely make out their bitter curses. "Your husband couldn't save my wife. Do you even understand that? That's so called medical genius. He's a fraud, and I heard his family's loaded. Kidnapping you means I can get the money I deserve for the loss he caused." When I realized he wanted money, a tiny bit of relief crept in. At least that meant my baby might be safe. But after 8 calls, 7 rejected, and 1 filled with nothing but blame and frustration, I lost all value in the kidnapper's eyes. I had never been more afraid. I knelt on the floor, begging them to spare my child, but it was no use. The knife on the table found its way to my stomach, plunging deep. A searing pain tore through me as blood, warm and thick, spilled out. My baby was gone, just like that. But only that morning. My little one had been kicking inside me. I passed out, slipping closer and closer to the edge of life. Without my baby, I had no desire to keep fighting. But just when I had made peace with the end, my best friend shattered the window to get to me. She glanced down at my phone, still faintly glowing on the floor, and yelled, "Why didn't you pick up? If I hadn't come, what would be happen to you? Were you just waiting to die?" She lifted me, trying frantically to call Sean. "Winnie's in court. Do not disturb." Those 6 words froze her in place. She tried calling the police, but the signal was gone. Dragging me into her car, she pushed on, only to run into that landslide. Maybe it was fate. I closed my eyes, letting the world drift away. Now, my best friend and I lay in the same hospital room. Silence filled the space, thick and heavy. She must have heard Ross's outburst over the phone. Despite her weakness, she forced herself to stand and gripped my hand, her face pale, tears spilling onto my hand. "I'm so sorry, Maisie. I never should have introduced you to Ross," she said softly, her voice trembling. "You deserve so much better than this." I could see the guilt weighing on her. But honestly, My heart hurt more for her. She had spent 2 years trying to conceive, only to lose her baby before she even realized she was pregnant. Just as I was about to speak, her husband, Sean, called. My brother says Maisie is planning to get rid of the baby. Was this your idea? Can you two stop acting crazy for once? And didn't I tell you yesterday I was working on Winnie's case? It's important. I told you not to bother me. Are you deaf? Honestly, I don't know why we married you. Always causing trouble. Talking about divorce and abortion like threats. Go ahead if you want to divorce. No one's asking you not to. The call ended abruptly. My best friend looked at her phone, shook her head, and tried to brush it off, but her eyes grew red. Taking her cold hand in mine, I whispered, "Don't be sad. We realize that's what matters. Maybe this is just a sign. It's time for us to let go. Let's get some rest. And when we re-stronger, we'll move out. Deal?" My brother says Maisie is planning to get rid of the baby. Was this your idea? Can you two stop acting crazy for once? And didn't I tell you yesterday I was working on Winnie's case? It's important. I told you not to bother me. Are you deaf? Honestly, I don't know why we married you. Always causing trouble. Talking about divorce and abortion like threats. Go ahead if you want to divorce. No one's asking you not to. The call ended abruptly. My best friend looked at her phone, shook her head, and tried to brush it off, but her eyes grew red. Taking her cold hand in mine, I whispered, "Don't be sad. We realize that's what matters. Maybe this is just a sign. It's time for us to let go. Let's get some rest. And when we're stronger, we'll move out. Deal?" She choked out a small okay, and finally let herself cry, collapsing onto my shoulder as our emotions overflowed. Fear, anger, and heartbreak, all the feelings we had bottled up finally spilled out. What we thought were dream marriages turned out to be nothing but nightmares. I remembered when we first got married, sharing the story of best friends marrying brothers online. We even got tons of comments, with people saying things like, "Wow, friends, marrying into the same family, double the fun," and "Dream come true. You two have got it made." But the fantasy shattered 6 months ago. When Winnie Green came back from overseas, suddenly, Ross was always too busy to pick up his phone, and Sean was constantly out, drinking and networking. That's when we realized this marriage had never been about love. It was Ross and Sean's twisted plan to get back at Winnie. All those promises, all that affection, just part of their selfish game. The cruel irony was how long Ellie and I had been fooled by them. We had even allowed them to bring Winnie into the house, only for them to dote on her in ways they never did with us. Photos of the two brothers with her filled their social media, always set to be hidden from her view. A doctor and a judge. Yet they revolved around her every need. Ross suddenly took an interest in obstetrics, and Sean went out of his way to help her with a divorce case. Meanwhile, Ellie and I, their actual wives, barely got a holiday greeting or a single flower in all that time. He was there, but his love felt like it never was. We overlooked the truth. His heart had moved on. Or maybe, there was never love at all. It took losing 2 lives for me to finally see it. Lying in bed, I distracted myself with my phone, trying hard to avoid social media. When I opened TikTok, a video on the trending page caught my eye. Winnie's latest post. She was basking in affection, practically flaunting her 2 childhood friends with pride. There were 3 photos, a group shot of the 3 of them, a legal document, and a close-up of her hands cradling her stomach. Her caption read, "Those who care for you will always show up before danger does. Thank you, my dearest friends." The comment section was full of admiration and jealousy. "Oh my God, where can I find childhood friends like this? Girl, you've got it good." 1 or 2 people even noted, "Hey, Don T, these 2 look familiar? Aren't they the brothers who married those best friends?" But those comments were buried quickly under all the adoring replies. Just then, Ellie sent me a screenshot of Winnie's latest post with a simple, steady message, "Maisie, I don't know why, but looking at this, I feel nothing. 2 husbands for 1 wife. Since they re so eager, let's make it official for them." I took a deep breath. "You rewrite. This has nothing to do with us anymore. I'm calling a divorce lawyer. I'd put up with this long enough." The lawyer worked fast, and by the next day, our divorce agreements were ready. I had the lawyer send copies to both Ross and Sean's emails. 2 days passed, and neither of them responded. The dull, grinding pain of waiting wore me down, and I finally lost patience. "Have you seen the divorce papers?" I messaged Ross. Please respond. The reply was yet another angry tirade. Haven't you caused enough trouble? I'm telling you, the more you push, the less I want to come home. Stop trying to test me. I didn't respond, stunned by his sheer arrogance. How had I not seen this before? Ross was nothing more than a self-absorbed fool. I was just about to explain myself when I heard Winnie's voice in the background. All syrupy and coy. Ross, what are you doing? Come on. Let's eat. Sean and I have been waiting for you. I couldn't help but mock him. No wonder you have no time for us. You're too busy with your precious sister, aren't you? Maisie, what's your problem? I'm just helping out. Winnie's pregnant, unlike you. She's helpless in the kitchen. He snapped. Pregnant. The word hit me like a punch. My composure shattered. You have the nerve to worry about someone else's child. What about ours? Ross, did you ever care for me? Or your own baby? His tone turned cold, dismissive. This is pointless, but Winnie chimed in with a sweet laugh. Maisie, we're both expecting mothers. I get how it is those pregnancy hormones can mess with your emotions. Not all moms are as lucky as me. But don't be too upset. Her words cut me like a knife. I felt my strength slipping away as pain flared at my still healing wound. Ross's voice drifted in with an indulgent murmur. Don't worry about her. Your health is all that matters. Winnie, whatever you need, I'll be there. I struggled to breathe as tears streamed down my face. He had never cared for me. Not once. What was I to him in these 2 years? A convenient piece of furniture. Nothing more. Before I could say another word, he hung up, crushed. I let out a sob. Ellie rushed over, wrapping me in a comforting embrace. Let it out. Maisie, she whispered, soothing me. He's not worth it. Your baby understood that much, that someone like him could never be a true father. It's okay. If they ignore the papers, we'll sue. This marriage is ending, one way or another. My best friend and I spent 3 weeks in the hospital. During this time, we received not a single word from the brothers. No one asked where we were, why we hadn't come home, or how we were doing. Any last vestiges of hope we'd held on to seemed to dissolve completely under their cold indifference. It wasn't until we were checking out of the hospital that we finally ran into Sean. He didn't notice us. His attention locked on his destination down the hallway. Curious, we quietly followed him to the maternity ward, where the reason for his absence became clear. There, Winnie lay on the bed, clinging to Ross, crying about her fear of giving birth. Sean was next to her, gently brushing the hair from her face, both of them looking at her with tender concern. The 3 of them, side by side, painted a picture of harmony that was painful to behold. My best friend and I instinctively placed our hands on our stomachs, the contrast to Winnie's scene of frightened happiness only emphasizing our sorrow. Forcing myself to look away, I grabbed my friend's arm and left the hospital with her. We had more important things to do. See you at the registry office the day after tomorrow, I texted Ross, and bring Sean with you. This is serious. If you don't show, we'll proceed with divorce through the courts. Almost immediately, Ross called me, but I hung up. Messages flooded in, but I didn't read them. I shut my phone off. Next, my friend and I headed to the police station to report what had happened. This wasn't just an incident. It was a calculated act of revenge against a doctor's family. I recounted the details to the officer, who looked deeply concerned. This is serious. Why report it now? If the suspect comes after you again, he started to say. I let out a bitter laugh. They won't. Even the kidnapper knows I have no value to Ross. Hurting me doesn't affect him at all. I pleaded with the officer to check the security footage, explaining that my best friend and I had lost our babies during the incident and survived a landslide on our own. His face softened with sympathy. Don't worry, Ms. Baker. We'll do our best to get to the bottom of this. Outside the station, we saw a new post from Winnie, a little angel, 6 pounds and 3 ounces, has come into my life. In the comments, Ross chimed in, Godfather number 1. Reporting for duty. Sean added, Godfather number 2. Here too, a pang of irony struck me. If they ever found out they'd lost their own children, I wondered, would it even matter to them? Exhausted from the day's ordeal, my friend and I returned to the small apartment I'd lived in before I married. When I turned my phone back on, a series of missed calls from Ross popped up. I decided to call back. He answered in a fury, practically yelling, Are you done with your tantrums? I told you to stay home and rest. Now the house is a disaster. I only found out because I dropped by to get a gift for Winnie's baby. And Ellie, what are you dragging her into now? Sean can't reach her, probably because of you. Do you have to poison everything around you? UVE ruined their marriage too. Are you happy? My best friend clenched her fists beside me, ready to unleash her rage, but I held her back. Don't waste your energy on someone like him, I whispered. Ross, let's keep it simple. I want a divorce. I have no time for your baseless accusations. My friend took the phone from me, unable to hold back any longer. You know what, Ross? Marrying into your family has been nothing but a curse. Let me make this clear. Ellie and I want divorces because you and Sean are fools. Get it? She ended the call and promptly blocked him on every platform. The next morning, just as we were leaving for the registry office, we saw Winnie at the entrance, cradling her baby. Her face was pale, and she looked pitiful, like a frail flower ready to wilt at the slightest breeze. The moment she saw us, she dropped to her knees, looking as helpless as ever. Maisie, Ellie, I'm so sorry. I'm here to apologize on behalf of Ross and Sean. This is all my fault. Don't blame them. They were just looking out for me as a single mother. They only stayed with me at the hospital because I was scared. That's all. I thought they'd already let you know. I even reminded them. I never wanted to cause a misunderstanding. Even now, she kept up the act, portraying herself as the innocent victim, flaunting the bond she shared with the brothers as if we, their wives, were nothing but outsiders. Seeing my friend's growing fury, I quickly stepped forward, leveling a cold look at Winnie. Oh? So what, Winnie? Do I need your permission to get a divorce? Your little act doesn't work on us anymore. Save it. Out of sheer politeness for the child in her arms, I bent down to help her up. But the moment she heard the elevator doors open, her expression shifted, and she let herself collapse onto the floor as if I'd pushed her. Startled, I was about to react when Ross came rushing over, shoving me hard. Maisie, how could you be so cruel? Get away from her, he shouted, caught off guard. I stumbled and fell, my friend rushing to help me up. Maisie, are you all right? Satisfied that Winnie was fine, Ross finally turned his attention to me, about to unleash a torrent of insults, until he noticed my now flat stomach. His face went pale. Where's the baby? He asked, his voice shaky. Maisie, where's our child? Just then, Sean emerged from the elevator, talking on his phone. What now? He called over. I could hear you two fighting from all the way down the hall. You'll scare the baby. I have to get back to court right away. There's a kidnapping case on trial. Something about a pregnant woman being stabbed. The prosecution is pressing charges. As he took in my appearance, he glanced at Ross. Hey bro, did she give birth already? The question seemed to jolt Ross back to his senses. He grabbed my shoulders, shaking me as panic filled his eyes. Maisie, you had the baby, right? Don't scare me like this. Ross's questions came in a rush, his hands gripping my shoulders and shaking me, his face desperate. My heart bled just as deeply. I could still feel the knife plunging into my stomach, the wrenching pain as I felt my baby slipping away. That horror was seared into my mind, raw and unrelenting. I had never felt such hatred, a hatred that engulfed me entirely. If only he had answered the phone, if he had given me a moment of his time, if he had sensed that I needed him, our baby might still be alive. Looking at Ross's and Sean's guilty faces now, I felt nothing but revulsion. The baby is gone, I said flatly. Not only mine, but Ellie's as well. She just found out she was 1 month pregnant. I told you both, but you didn't listen. There's nothing left to say. Divorce is the only option. Ross stumbled back, disbelief flooding his eyes as he muttered. So you weren't just trying to scare me. Our baby is actually gone. Then, snapping out of his shock, he shouted, Maisie, you're not even human. The baby was 8 months along, and you just decided to end it out of spite? She was fully formed. Are you insane? How could you kill our child? Come with me to the police station, you need to pay for this. A bitter, sad smile crossed my face as I met his gaze. If you want to talk about killers, look at yourself and Winnie. I was attacked because of a surgery you performed, out of revenge for a life you couldn't save. They found me because of you. They beat me, they kicked me, they drove a knife into my belly, and you call me inhuman? Who led them to me? Your dear sister Winnie. She let them know that kidnapping me would draw your attention. So, tell me, who really killed our child? My voice shook with the weight of my pain. Do you think anyone feels this loss more deeply than I do? No, it wasn't me, Winnie stammered, scrambling to defend herself. but Sean cut her off, turning to me. Wait, Ellie was a month pregnant? What happened to her baby? I thought only one person was kidnapped. What does any of this have to do with her? He demanded, voice unsteady. At that, Ellie stepped forward and slapped him hard across the face. You have no right to ask. If any of you had bothered to answer your phones, we wouldn't have been caught in the landslide. We wouldn't have been trapped. Our baby wouldn't have died. Maybe it's better this way. You two never deserved to be fathers or husbands. Wasn't it clear you were always more invested in Winnie and her child? Now you can finally have your real family. What happens to our children doesn't concern you. Sean looked stunned, one hand raised to his cheek where the mark of her slap was still visible. Ross, however, had finally grasped the gravity of the situation. His face frozen in shock. You retelling me that Maisie was actually kidnapped? Why didn't you call me? You got caught in the landslide trying to save her? Why didn't you tell us? He pleaded, his voice beginning to crack, a hint of desperation slipping through. Too late. Far too late for that. The time for regret had long passed. I kept my voice steady, though my words were cold, laced with bitter irony. When you ignored 7 of my calls, I was tied up, being beaten. When you finally answered the 8th time, I was already worthless to them. They decided the baby's life wasn't worth sparing. You could have saved us, Ross. The kidnapper only wanted money at first. He never intended to kill our child. Ross collapsed, burying his face in his hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Winnie tried to comfort him, wrapping her arms around him, but he shoved her away with such force that her hand scraped against the floor, leaving a smear of blood. Her eyes widened, uncomprehending. This was the first time she'd ever been pushed aside like this. Ignoring her, I turned to Sean, my expression hard. Guess who's involved in that kidnapping case you rehandling? The victim and the plaintiff, to be exact? The truth dawned on them, their gazes sharp with sudden suspicion as they looked at Winnie. And no, it wasn't me. I swear, she stammered, looking terrified. I was just at the mall that day. I was a victim too. How could it be me? How could I know it was Maisie who'd been kidnapped? In the past, her teary defenses would have melted their hearts instantly, prompting them to rush to her side. But now, neither of them moved to comfort her. Instead, they exchanged silent glances, their expressions clouded with something between contempt and realization. I stepped closer, my voice calm but carrying a deadly finality. I never mentioned where or when it happened. So tell me, Winnie, how did you know I was at the mall? Panic flickered in her eyes as she realized her mistake. Winnie attempted to stand, feigning discomfort in her stomach, mumbling something about needing to leave. Although I had no concrete proof against her, my suspicion was clear enough to rattle her. The truth would come out soon enough once the police had evidence in hand. I turned my gaze to Ross, my voice cold and unfeeling. What are we waiting for? Everyone's here. Let's go to the registry office and finalize the divorce. The faces of the 2 brothers darkened, and they both remained silent, unwilling to move even an inch. Sean was the first to speak. Maisie, I have to get back to work. The team at the courthouse is waiting for me, and the prosecutor's office is on standby. I'll come home after and explain everything. Please, let's not go through with the divorce. We can have another child. Ellie, let me just finish my work today. Without waiting for an answer, he turned, clearly hoping to escape the confrontation. But I spoke up, stopping him in his tracks. Unless I'm mistaken, you're rehandling a case involving my kidnapper, aren't you? A man called Logan White? I reached into my bag and pulled out the court summons, handing it to him. Check for yourself. If this is the case you're reworking on, then all the more reason to go through with the divorce. Today, yes. We're done today, Ellie added, her voice filled with disgust. I'm not spending another minute attached to you. Sean's eyes fell on the document in my hand, his face turning pale as he read. Maisie, what do you mean? This kidnapping case I'm prosecuting, it's your case? They told me a pregnant woman was stabbed, but I never knew it was you. Both brothers' expressions grew tense. Ross looked at me, suspicion flashing across his face. Maisie, this is serious. I know you hate us, but this has nothing to do with Sean's work. Stop making a scene. Let us finish our business, and we'll talk then. He still thought I was lying, twisting things to get back at them. A dry, humorless laugh escaped me. You think I'm staging a performance with my own child's life on the line? Do you really believe you re that important to me, Ross? You're a stranger to me now. You're the last person I'd put on a show for. As for all that talk about me being dramatic, angry, or vying for attention, I suggest you stop. Because it makes me sick to hear it. Frankly, even looking at you disgusts me now. Do you understand yet? All I want is a divorce. Go anywhere you please, just stay away from me. Ross's eyes shifted to Sean, clearly hoping his brother would back him up, offer some reassurance that I was bluffing. But Sean, staring at his phone in shock, finally looked up, disbelief etched across his face. It's true, brother. This case, it's the one about Maisie. She asked the victim. Ross's skepticism remained, though the shock had begun to sink in. He scoffed. Even if that's the truth, it's not our fault. I understand you're grieving, and I'll let you vent. But divorce? Maisie, think this through. This isn't you can just undo. Don't regret decision you it. And you, who hasn't worked in a year, should consider what life without me might mean. Divorce isn't a card to play for attention. You think blaming me for your bad luck will get you what you want? Besides, if someone really wanted revenge against me, I'd have heard from the hospital by now. Just tell me how the baby was really lost. I won't blame you. We can have more children later. But don't act like this is my fault. And leave my brother out of it. I've been wondering if you read just bad luck. Ever since we got married, it's been one misfortune after another. Ross continued his usual routine, trying to gaslight me with his twisted logic. I could see a flash of satisfaction in his eyes as he watched my trembling hands, thinking he had won. Once again blaming everything on me. This was the man I had married, the one I once thought I would grow old with, build a family with. Now, I saw clearly his cold, unfeeling nature. I would never regret leaving. But before I could respond, Ellie let loose on him. Do you have no shame? She shouted. The baby's gone because of you. When I found Maisie, she was barely alive. Do you even get that? And you call her bad luck? If that's what you think, divorce us already. Your whole family is hypocritical and disgusting. None of you deserve to have children. May you all live long and childless lives. Her words lit a fire in Sean, who quickly grabbed his documents and stormed off towards the registry office. Fine, divorce it is. You'll regret this. Both of you, he spat. But we didn't care. We were already done. An hour later, we both held our divorce certificates in hand. A sense of relief washing over us like a fresh breeze. Standing outside the office, we exchanged glances, our faces filled with freedom and peace. Let's head back to the Gregory estate and pack up our things, I said. I don't want a single piece of me left in that place. Sean hurried off after leaving the office, likely rushing back to his work, while Winnie called Ross, her voice dripping with calculated distress. Ross, my stomach hurts. I got in a car accident on the way home, and I'm so scared. What's going on over there? That kidnapping stuff isn't true, right? Ross, can you come be with me? Ross's face immediately filled with concern as he assured her he'd be right there, but I had already recognized the hint of fear and scheming in her tone. Ellie must have noticed me standing there in silence, mistaking it for sadness. She quickly took my hand, her expression gentle and comforting. Maisie, don't worry. Trust the police. They'll uncover the truth and make sure Winnie's little act falls apart. Her support warmed me, reminding me that leaving these men behind was a reason for joy, not sorrow. Once we packed up from the Gregory house, I took Ellie to a spa and beauty center. We indulged in every treatment we had ever wanted but previously held back on. After a complete transformation, we looked at ourselves in the mirror, renewed and radiant. Our bodies, fortunately, hadn't changed much from the pregnancies. With some effort and care, we looked even more vibrant than before. Returning home that night, I felt a calm I hadn't known in ages and fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. The next day, a call from the police woke me up. We've identified the suspect, but he's hired a top criminal defense lawyer. Without solid evidence, the case will be hard to move forward. The officer's words sent a chill through me. No evidence? What about the security footage? I asked. If I remember correctly, there should be cameras in the mall parking lot. We checked. Ms. Baker, he replied regretfully. Unfortunately, it seems that the cameras were out of service that day. My heart sank. Out of service? It was too convenient to be an accident. Not only had the kidnapper managed to pinpoint my exact location, But he had somehow sabotaged the cameras in advance. There was no way Winnie wasn't involved in this. That day at the mall had been a spur-of-the-moment decision. And only Ross and Winnie knew where I was going. When I was forced into the van, I had caught a glimpse of a figure at the stairwell entrance, someone who looked very much like Winnie. At the time, it had been unclear, but now I was tears de man. Bun with no events the mesigation was ring trident and my instruments. I had empet far. Unlearning about the kidnapping Ross and Bear Mig finally take action. Just tren. My pit tang and save Ross game on the screen. I braced myself fighting of the surge of disgust as Eos note was laced with irritation as he complained Maisie. Are you sure this so-called indie napping is because of me? The police don't have any proof but my supervisor's insisting I go in for a statement. Do you have any idea how busy Tam? The patience I had clung to for the past days finally snapped. My rage exploded and I didn't bother hiding it as I yelled into the phone, Ross, I have no interest in playing games with you. My child is gone because of you. All I'm asking for is justice. And you can't even be bothered to help? And you have the nerve to complain about how busy you are? I had never lost control like that in front of Ross before. On our wedding day, he told me he liked gentle, demure women, so for 2 years, I played the part, quiet, obedient, never challenging him, always patient. Looking back, it was clear how he had gradually molded me to fit his image of Winnie. But I no longer cared how he saw me. I was finished playing that role, finished with him. The days I'd wasted on him in that cold, empty house filled me with disgust. In his eyes, I had always been nothing more than an accessory, someone to soothe his ego without expecting anything in return. After finally venting my anger at him, I felt a weight lift. Ellie, who had heard my outburst, came out of her room, took my hand, and gave me a strong hug. Don't worry, I assured her, my voice steady. I'm done with him. Men like that aren't worth a single tear. But what about the surveillance footage? She asked, worry creasing her brow. I shrugged. We'll deal with it as it comes. That night, I lay awake, restless, but early the next morning, a call came from the police station. They had found an eyewitness, a security guard from the mall's underground parking lot. He witnessed the entire incident himself but thought it was related to a robbery at the mall, so he didn't call the police. Excitement surged through me as I jumped out of bed and pulled Ellie along to the police station. The security guard explained that he had seen 2 men following me suspiciously and a woman who took the elevator to the mall after I was forced into the van. When I showed him Winnie's social media profile, he nodded without hesitation. Yes, that's her. I remember her curly hair and her pregnancy bump. She was there. This new lead quickly guided the police to the detained suspects, who, seeing the evidence closing in, finally came clean. Yes, it was that woman, Winnie Green, who contacted our boss. One of the thugs confessed. She told him how the doctor's surgery had killed his wife, hinted he might want payback, and suggested using his wife as leverage to squeeze some cash out of him. She even gave us photos of Ross's wife and the address where we'd find her. Our job was just to make him pay $1 million. We didn't pick the target or plan anything. We just followed orders. As the police relayed the full story to Ross, disbelief flooded his face. His eyes, wide with shock and suspicion, flashed as he confronted the officer. Officer, you must be mistaken. Winnie was pregnant too. Could never do something so cruel. Did Maisie put you up to this? Is she trying to frame Winnie? The officer's face hardened as he answered coldly. What benefit would I gain from lying? I'm here to provide the facts, not play games. This is a serious investigation, so I suggest you treat it as such. Our interrogation confirmed that a young pregnant woman with curly hair gave them this information, the officer said firmly, pulling out the transcript of the kidnapper's statement. Ross quickly took it and began reading. Police, describe the details after you took the hostage. Kidnapper, after we grabbed Ross's wife. I don't know much else. The boss just told us to wait outside. All I know is Ross didn't care one bit about his wife. We called him 8 times, but he wouldn't let her finish a single sentence, let alone agree to pay. She was sobbing her heart out, begging us to spare her unborn child, kneeling over and over, and we could even hear her banging her head on the ground. Who would have guessed her husband would be that heartless? It was his coldness that pushed the boss over the edge. Ross read the confession, his face pale, his entire body slumping into a chair as the truth hit him. No, It can't be. Maisie was telling the truth all along. The baby's gone because of me. It's all my fault. I didn't answer the phone. This is all my fault. Confusion and regret tore through his mind, clouding every thought. He couldn't understand why Winnie, of all people, would betray him like this. He sat there in silence for the rest of the afternoon, smoking his way through an entire pack of cigarettes before finally summoning the nerve to call Winnie. The phone rang and rang, but no one picked up. In the end, Ross had always trusted Winnie over me. To him, she was an innocent, his childhood friend, his so-called perfect dream girl. Even after everything I had endured, he instinctively looked for ways to justify her actions. But when the truth was laid bare, undeniable, he could no longer fool himself. His gaze, once full of admiration, was now filled with disdain and resentment for her. I saw it and thought, serves you right. The kidnapping case finally went to trial, and Sean, of all people, served as the defense attorney. But the verdict brought little satisfaction. The kidnappers who had killed my child and indirectly caused Ellie to lose hers received only 10 years. The rage that had simmered within me now burned hotter. My fists clenched as I relived that horrific day. I knew then that I couldn't let this verdict stand, so I filed for an appeal. Ellie, just as incensed, did the same. Her ex-husband, a man she once loved, had gone easy on the person responsible for her best friend's child's death. It was a bitter pill to swallow. If not for that incident, if not for the Gregory brothers' negligence, we wouldn't have been forced to face death. We wouldn't have lost our children. Then, more news came. Winnie had evaded capture but had been flagged on a flight out of the country. The authorities had set up airport surveillance, as it was clear that she had realized her plans had unraveled and was now attempting to flee. This case, involving the brutal revenge against a detective's pregnant family member, had created a public outcry. The entire country was appalled. The case had crossed the limits of basic decency. If Ellie hadn't found me through my phone's location, it would have been a double tragedy. My body would have lain undiscovered in that forest. When Ross learned the full extent of the events, he was stunned. This was a carefully orchestrated kidnapping, one that involved his most trusted friend. After finishing our final statement at the police station, Ellie and I decided to drive home. But just as we reached an intersection, waiting for the light to turn, a red Maserati came hurtling toward us. Only at the last moment did I see Winnie in the driver's seat, her face twisted with rage, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. There was no time to move, no time to escape. All I could do was grab Ellie's hand and close my eyes, bracing for the impact. There was a loud crash, but the pain never came. Ellie, are you okay? We were actually unharmed. Ellie hesitated before saying, Maisie. I think Ross blocked Winnie's car for us. Look. Following her gaze, I saw 2 cars on the side of the road, both billowing smoke. In the ambulance, Ross was insistent on seeing me. Maisie, I'm so sorry. I let you down, and I let down our baby. This is all my fault. I'm so sorry. Thank God you're safe. When I wake up, please, could we try again? Give me another chance. Maisie, I pulled my hand back, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. No, there's no future for us. Ross, it's finally your turn to feel a fraction of the pain you put me through. Turning away, I saw Sean on his knees, begging Ellie, please, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have pushed for a lighter sentence for Winnie. I thought it would spare her, but she tried to kill you. I'm scum. I protected the woman who killed our child. Do whatever you want, hit me, scream at me, just don't leave me. But Ellie didn't say a word. She simply got into the car, leaving him to stumble after her until he fell back, exhausted. What use was regret now? Their so-called affection had arrived far too late to mean anything. A month later, the final updates trickled in. Winnie had lost a leg in the crash, and her newborn child, abandoned and without care, had died of starvation in her apartment. As an accomplice in a kidnapping plot, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Her life, once filled with promise, was now locked away behind bars. Sean, after his bias in the kidnapping case came to light, was terminated from his position with all benefits revoked. He had lost everything. As for Ross, his injuries left his right hand permanently damaged, ending his surgical career. He was relegated to an administrative role, stripped of the prestige he had once enjoyed. He fell into a state of constant gloom. endlessly seeking my forgiveness. The fallout from his neglect, failing to answer my calls, had led to severe consequences. The revenge plot and kidnapping case took over a month to resolve, causing a major public outrage. Social media was flooded with criticism, and the hospital, mindful of his now tarnished reputation, reassigned him to a back-office role with a steep cut in pay and status. The Gregory brothers, relentless in their guilt, tried calling us from new numbers daily, attempting to apologize and reconcile. After blocking them and eventually involving the police to drive them away, they finally gave up. We had survived too much pain to ever look back. My best friend and I knew this was only the beginning of our better days ahead.